The sky above Valoria Prime burned red as enemy ships descended like locusts. Jake Morrison crouched behind a broken wall and checked his rifle. 3 magazines left, maybe 40 rounds total, not nearly enough for what was coming. He looked back at Princess Liara. She stood in the center of the courtyard, her crystalline skin catching the firelight. Her purple eyes were wide with fear, but she held herself steady. Around her, 6 Korvathi guards formed a protective circle. They wore ceremonial armor that looked beautiful but would not stop much. Jake had been on this alien world for 6 months. The Korvathi Empire had invited humans to teach them about military tactics. Most of the Korvathi commanders ignored him. They thought human warfare was too brutal, too ugly for their refined civilization. Only Liara had listened. She spent hours asking him questions about Earth's history, about how humans survived so many wars. Now those wars were about to save her life. Or at least buy her a few more minutes. The Draknor swarm had appeared without warning 3 days ago. They swept across Valoria Prime like a plague, killing everything in their path. The Korvathi military, trained for parade grounds rather than battlefields, collapsed. Liara's convoy had been cut off while returning from a diplomatic mission. Her guards fought bravely, but one by one they fell. Now only Jake and these 6 remained. Jake heard the clicking sound first. The Draknor communicated through rapid clicks and hisses. They were close now. He raised his hand and made a fist. The Korvathi guards saw the signal and tightened their formation around Liara. They might not understand human tactics, but they understood protection. The first Draknor warrior appeared at the end of the street. It stood 7 feet tall, covered in black chitinous armor. Its forearms each held a wicked blade. Behind it, more warriors emerged from the smoke and shadows. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Jake fired. His first 3 shots took down the lead warrior. The others scattered, seeking cover. Good, they could be hurt. They could be killed. That meant they could be stopped. The battle started in earnest. Jake moved constantly, never staying in one position for more than a few seconds. He fired controlled bursts, each one finding a target. The Korvathi guards used their energy weapons, but they fired too slowly, too carefully. They were trying not to waste shots. Jake had tried to teach them that in combat, speed mattered more than precision. A Draknor warrior broke through the line. It charged straight at Liara. Jake was too far away to shoot. But Commander Velrix, the leader of her guards, stepped forward. He swung his blade in a perfect arc and cut the warrior down. Then a second Draknor appeared behind him. Before Velrix could turn, it drove a blade through his back. 5 guards left. Jake pulled a grenade from his belt and threw it into a cluster of advancing enemies. The explosion sent bodies flying. He used the confusion to fall back to a better position. The Korvathi guards followed his lead, moving when he moved, stopping when he stopped. They were learning, but learning took time and time was running out. Jake glanced at Liara again. She was using her psionic powers to shield the group from projectiles. Blue energy shimmered in the air around them. He could see the strain on her face. She was not trained for combat. None of the Korvathi were. They had enjoyed peace for so long that they forgot what war cost. 2 more guards fell. Jake did not see how. One moment they were there, the next they were down. The Draknor were adapting to his tactics, flanking and using cover. They were not mindless beasts. They had intelligence, strategy. That made them far more dangerous. 3 guards left. Jake made a decision. They could not hold this position. They needed to reach the temple at the end of the street. The ancient Korvathi temple had psionic wards that the Draknor could not cross. If he could get Liara there, she would be safe. He shouted orders. The remaining guards formed a wedge with Liara in the center. Jake took point, firing as he advanced. The Draknor seemed surprised by the sudden aggression. They fell back, regrouping. That hesitation was all Jake needed. They ran. Jake led them through burning streets and over rubble. Behind them, the Draknor howled and gave chase. Energy bolts sizzled past his head. One caught a guard in the shoulder, spinning him around. The guard tried to keep running but collapsed after a few steps. 2 guards left. The temple came into view. Its white stone walls glowed faintly with protective energy. Just 100 yards. They could make it. They had to make it. Then the Draknor war beast appeared. It was massive, easily 20 feet tall. Its roar shook the ground. The beast charged down the street, crushing debris under its clawed feet. Jake emptied his magazine into it. The rounds sparked off its thick hide. The creature did not even slow down. One of the guards pushed Liara toward the temple. He and the other guard turned to face the beast. Their energy weapons blazed. The beast swatted them aside like insects. Both guards hit the ground hard and did not get up. No guards left. Just Jake. He grabbed Liara's hand and ran. The temple entrance was so close. 50 yards, 40, 30. Behind them, the war beast thundered forward. Draknor warriors poured into the street from every direction. Jake pulled out his last grenade. Not enough to stop a war beast, but maybe enough to slow it down. He armed the explosive and threw it. The grenade bounced once and detonated beneath the creature. The beast stumbled, bellowing in pain and rage, 20 yards, 10. They reached the temple entrance. Liara stumbled across the threshold. The moment she passed through the archway, blue light flared. The psionic wards activated. She was safe now. The Draknor could not enter sacred ground, but Jake was still outside. He turned to face the approaching horde. His rifle was empty. He drew his combat knife, a simple piece of steel that had been with him through a dozen conflicts on Earth. It seemed fitting that it would be with him at the end. Liara screamed his name. He glanced back at her and smiled. It was the same smile he gave her the first time they met, when she asked him if humans were really as violent as the stories said. He had told her yes, but that violence was not always evil. Sometimes it was necessary. Sometimes it was the only way to protect what mattered. Now she would see the truth of those words. The Draknor warriors reached him first. Jake fought like a man possessed. His knife found gaps in armor, severed tendons, pierced organs. He moved through the enemy like water, never stopping, never hesitating. Blood sprayed. Bodies fell. The Draknor had never faced anything like a human soldier with nothing left to lose. But there were too many. A blade caught him across the ribs. Another opened his shoulder. Pain bloomed hot and red. Jake kept fighting. He dropped to one knee, still slashing. A Draknor kicked him in the chest, knocking him onto his back. Through the legs of his enemies, Jake could see Liara. She was crying, her hands pressed against the barrier of the temple wards. He wanted to tell her it was okay. He wanted to tell her she would survive, that his death meant something. But he had no breath left for words. A Draknor warrior raised its blade high. Jake closed his eyes. The blade fell. Jake Morrison died as he had lived, fighting to protect someone who needed him. His last thought was not of pain or regret. It was of Liara's purple eyes, bright with tears, watching him fall. He hoped she would remember him. He hoped his death would mean something. Then darkness took him, and he knew nothing more, or so he thought. Inside the temple, Liara felt Jake's life force fade. The connection between them, something she had never fully acknowledged, suddenly went cold. It was like losing part of herself. She sank to her knees, grief overwhelming her, but grief could wait. The Draknor were still outside, still trying to find a way through the wards. And Jake's death could not be for nothing. Liara remembered something her mother had told her long ago, a secret passed down through the royal bloodline. An ancient ritual forbidden for 1,000 years that could bind a dying soul to a living one. It was dangerous. It was possibly wrong. But Liara did not care about danger or propriety anymore. Jake had given everything for her. The least she could do was give him a reason to keep existing. She closed her eyes and reached out with her psionic power. She searched for Jake's departing spirit, that fading spark of consciousness. She found it drifting away into darkness. Without hesitation, Liara grabbed hold and pulled. Reality twisted. Energy surged. And somewhere in the space between life and death, Jake Morrison screamed as his soul was yanked back from the void and bound to an alien princess who refused to let him go. Jake woke up in darkness. At least he thought it was waking up. He had no body, no eyes to open, no lungs to fill with air. Yet somehow he existed. He was aware. He could think. Panic hit him first. He tried to move, but there was nothing to move. He tried to speak, but had no voice. Was this death? Was this what came after? An eternity of consciousness trapped in nothing. Then he felt her. Liara. Her presence surrounded him like warm water. He could sense her emotions, feel her relief mixed with exhaustion. Through some connection he did not understand, Jake realized he was inside her mind. Or she was inside his. Or they were somehow merged together in a way that defied explanation. Liara's thoughts touched his. She was trying to communicate, to explain what she had done. Images flooded into Jake's awareness. The ancient ritual, the forbidden binding, her desperate choice to save him from fading away completely. Jake understood then. His body was dead. His soul should have moved on to whatever came next. But Liara had caught him, bound him to her life force. He existed now as part of her. A ghost chained to a living host. He should have been angry. She had trapped him, denied him the peace of death. But as he felt her emotions, he understood her reasoning. She was alone in the temple. The Draknor were still outside, searching for a way through the wards. She needed help. More than that, she could not bear to lose him completely. Jake tried to speak. To his surprise, his thoughts formed into words that Liara could hear. "Can you hear me?" "Yes." Liara's mental voice was clear and strong. "I can hear you. I am sorry, Jake. I had no right to bind you like this. But I could not let you go." It took Jake a moment to process this new reality. He focused on practical matters because that was what soldiers did. "We need to get you out of here. How long can these wards hold? Days, maybe weeks. But I cannot stay here. My mother needs me. The capital is under siege. Our people are dying." Jake extended his awareness. It was strange seeing through Liara's eyes, but also perceiving more. He could sense the layout of the temple, detect movement outside the wards. The Draknor had posted guards, but most had moved on. They assumed Liara was trapped and would deal with her later. "There is a path through the eastern gardens. Only 6 guards. We can slip past them after dark. How do you know that?" Liara's confusion was clear. Jake was not sure himself. The soul bond seemed to give him abilities beyond normal perception. He could sense things Liara could not, detect patterns and movements. "I just know. Trust me." They waited for nightfall. During those hours, Jake learned more about the bond. He could not control Liara's body directly, but he could guide her, suggest movements. She could share his knowledge, access his memories of tactics and strategy. They were becoming something neither had been alone. A warrior and a princess merged into one. When darkness came, they moved. Liara crept through the temple corridors following Jake's mental directions. "Left here, stop, wait for the patrol to pass, now move." Quick and quiet, they reached the eastern wall. Beyond it lay the gardens and then open countryside. Jake counted the guards through Liara's senses. 6, as he predicted, all clustered near the main gate. They had left the garden wall unwatched. Liara used her psionic powers to lift herself over the wall. She landed softly in the garden below. The Draknor did not react. They had not seen or heard anything, see? Jake's satisfaction was evident. "Told you we could make it. Do not celebrate yet. We still have 50 miles to reach the capital. Then we better start walking." The journey through occupied territory took 3 days. Jake guided Liara through enemy patrols, showed her how to move without being seen, where to find food and water. She was exhausted, hungry, and terrified, but she kept going. Jake could feel her determination through the bond. She would reach the capital or die trying. On the second night, they sheltered in a ruined farmhouse. Liara collapsed against a wall, too tired to move further. Through their connection, Jake felt her physical pain and emotional exhaustion. He wished he could do more than just offer advice. "Tell me about Earth." Liara's mental voice was soft. "I want to think about something other than war." Jake shared memories. Not of battles, but of better things. Sunrise over the Rocky Mountains. The smell of his grandmother's cooking. His sister's laugh. Simple moments that meant everything. Liara absorbed these memories like someone dying of thirst drinks water. In return, she shared her own memories. Growing up in the Crystal Palace. Learning to use her psionic gifts. The weight of being a princess, always watched, always judged. Jake saw her loneliness, her desire to be more than just a symbol. "You understand?" That was all Liara said. But Jake felt the depth of emotion behind those words. She had never found anyone who truly understood her until now. "Yeah, I understand." The soul bond made lying impossible. Every truth was laid bare between them. Jake could not hide his growing feelings for Liara. She could not hide her own. They were falling in love despite the impossible circumstances. A dead soldier and a living princess, connected in ways that should not exist. On the 3rd day, they made contact with the resistance. A patrol of Korvathi fighters found Liara stumbling through the forest. They surrounded her with weapons drawn until their leader recognized her. "Princess." General Theros pushed through the circle of fighters. He was an older Korvathi, his crystalline skin marked with the scars of many battles. "We thought you were dead, I nearly was." Liara's voice was hoarse from days without speaking. "But Jake Morrison saved me." Theros looked around. "Where is the human?" "He is here, with me." Liara touched her chest. I bound his soul to mine, the fighters gasped. Some stepped back as if Liara had become dangerous. Theros simply stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. The old general was one of the few Korvathi who had listened to Jake's lectures on human warfare. He understood the value of such a bond. Can he hear me now? Yes, Jake spoke through Liara using her voice. I can hear you, General. The fighters muttered nervously. It was disturbing, hearing their princess speak with a human's inflection and tone. Theros silenced them with a gesture. Then we have much to discuss. The situation is dire. We need every advantage we can get. The resistance had established a base in the mountains outside the capital. Theros led them there, a forced march that took most of the night. When they arrived, Liara saw how bad things were. Hundreds of fighters crowded into caves and makeshift shelters. Many were wounded. All looked exhausted and hopeless. Inside the command cave, Theros gathered his officers. He explained about the soul bond. Some objected immediately. A priest named Sarath was particularly vocal. This is an abomination. The princess has enslaved a human soul. It violates every spiritual law we hold sacred. I am not enslaved. Jake spoke through Liara again. I volunteered, or at least I accept what was done. Your people need help, and I can provide it. Sarath was not convinced. You are dead. You should be at rest. Instead, you are trapped, used as a weapon. Better to be a useful weapon than useless dust. Jake's blunt response shocked the Korvathi. They were not used to such direct speech. But I will not force my help on you. If you want me gone, the princess can release the bond. I will fade away, and you can face the Draknor using your own methods. How has that been working out so far? The cave fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. The Korvathi were losing badly. Their military tactics, designed for ceremonial displays rather than real combat, were useless against the brutal Draknor. Theros broke the silence. What do you propose, Morrison? Jake laid out a strategy. Guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run attacks, sabotage, ambush, all the dirty tactics that humans had perfected over thousands of years of killing each other. The Korvathi officers looked horrified. Such methods were dishonorable, brutal, beneath their dignity. You want dignity or victory? Because you cannot have both. Not against enemies like the Draknor. Theros considered this. Then he stood and faced his officers. We will follow Morrison's advice. I do not like these tactics either, but I like extinction less. Anyone who cannot accept this may leave now. I will think no less of you. Several officers left. Sarath was among them, but most stayed. They were desperate enough to try anything, even human brutality. The next days were spent training. Jake taught them through Liara, showing the fighters how to set ambushes, how to strike fast and retreat faster, how to use terrain and surprise. The Korvathi struggled with these concepts. They had been raised to value honor and fair combat. Jake's methods felt wrong to them, but slowly they learned. And more importantly, they saw results. Small raids on Draknor supply lines succeeded. Enemy patrols disappeared. The invaders became cautious, uncertain. For the first time since the war began, the Korvathi were not just surviving. They were fighting back. Late one night, Liara sat alone in her cave. She was exhausted from days of training and planning. Through their bond, Jake felt her weariness and something else. Doubt. What troubles you? He asked gently. Are we becoming like them? Like the Draknor? We use violence and cruelty now. We strike from shadows. Is this who we want to be? Jake shared a memory with her. A conversation he once had with his sister. She had asked him how he could do his job. How he could live with the violence. He had told her that sometimes good people must do hard things. Not because they want to, but because someone must. The alternative was to let evil win unopposed. You are not becoming the Draknor. You are becoming survivors. There is a difference. Liara absorbed this. Through their bond, she felt Jake's certainty, his conviction that some fights were worth the cost. Slowly she nodded. You are right. I just wish there was another way, so do I. But there is not, so we do what we must. They sat together in silence, a princess and a ghost bound by necessity and growing into something more. Outside, the war continued. Inside, two souls learned to exist as one, preparing for battles yet to come. 3 weeks after Liara reached the resistance, the war began to shift. Small victories accumulated into something larger. Supply convoys destroyed. Communication towers sabotaged. Enemy outposts burned in the night. The Draknor advance, which had seemed unstoppable, slowed to a crawl. General Theros stood before a tactical map, studying troop positions. Beside him, Liara provided Jake's analysis through their shared bond. The enemy is overextended. Their supply line stretched too thin. If we hit them here and here simultaneously, we can cut off their forward units. The other officers gathered around. They still found it strange to hear human military thinking spoken through their princess, but they could not argue with results. In 3 weeks they had gone from hunted refugees to an effective fighting force. One officer, a young warrior named Kren, pointed at the map. What about their reinforcements? If we commit to this attack and they send fresh troops, we will be trapped. That is why we do not commit fully. Jake's tactical mind worked through Liara's voice. We send a raiding force. Fast in, hard strike, fast out. Classic guerrilla tactics. By the time their reinforcements arrive, we are gone. Theros approved the plan. The raid launched that night. 50 fighters, handpicked and trained in Jake's methods, struck at 2 Draknor supply depots simultaneously. They used explosives, created chaos, and vanished before the enemy could respond. Hundreds of tons of supplies went up in flames. News of the success spread quickly through the resistance. Morale improved. More volunteers arrived each day wanting to join the fight. But success brought new problems. The Korvathi capital needed to hear about these victories. Queen Izara needed to know her daughter was alive, and that hope still existed. Theros arranged a risky communication with the capital. Using a narrow beam transmission that the Draknor could not intercept, he contacted the royal palace. Queen Izara's face appeared on the viewing screen. She looked older than Liara remembered, worn down by weeks of siege. Mother. Liara's voice cracked with emotion. I am alive. The queen's relief was visible. Liara, thank the ancestors. We received reports that your convoy was destroyed. I feared the worst. It was destroyed. Everyone died except me. Jake Morrison saved my life. Where is he? I wish to thank him personally. Liara hesitated. Then she explained. The soul bond. Jake's death. Her desperate choice. The queen listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When Liara finished, the queen closed her eyes. You used the forbidden ritual. Do you understand what you have done? I saved him. I saved us both. You bound a soul against its will. You violated laws that have stood for millennia. The Royal Council will demand answers. Some will call for your removal from succession. Jake spoke then, using Liara's voice but making his presence clear. Your Majesty, with respect, I volunteered, or as close to volunteering as a dead man can manage. I hold no resentment toward Liara. She gave me purpose when I should have had none. The queen opened her eyes and studied the screen carefully. She seemed to see through Liara to the consciousness behind her words. Morrison, you truly accept this bond? Yes, ma'am, and you will help us win this war. That is what I do, ma'am. I fight. A long silence followed. Then the queen nodded slowly. Very well. I will deal with the council. You will have your chance to prove this bond has value. But understand this, Morrison. If you fail, if you lead my daughter into danger, I will find a way to destroy you. Soul or no soul, I would expect nothing less, Your Majesty. The transmission ended. Liara sagged with relief. Her mother had not rejected her. The bond, while controversial, would be accepted out of necessity. It was all she could ask for. But Jake sensed something else in the Queen's response. Fear, not of the Draknor, but of what the war was doing to her people. The Korvathi were changing, becoming harder and more violent. Queen Isara worried about what they would be when the fighting finally ended. Over the following weeks, the resistance campaign intensified. Jake coordinated multiple strike teams, turning the mountains into a maze of ambush points and hidden bases. The Draknor could not move without risking attack. Their commanders grew frustrated, making mistakes that the resistance exploited ruthlessly. But victory came with costs. Korvathi fighters died in raids. Some were captured and killed slowly, the Draknor learning cruelty from their enemies. Each death weighed on Liara. She felt responsible for every life lost following her orders. Jake felt her guilt through their bond. One night, as she sat alone reviewing casualty reports, he reached out to her mentally. This is not your fault. War has casualties. You cannot save everyone, I know. But knowing does not make it easier. No, it never does. Jake shared memories of his own losses. Friends who died in combat. soldiers under his command who did not come home. The weight of leadership was something they both carried now. "How did you bear it?" Liara asked. "How did you keep fighting when every victory cost so much?" I remembered why I was fighting. Not for glory or revenge, to protect people who could not protect themselves. That made the cost worthwhile. Liara absorbed this wisdom. Through their bond, she felt Jake's conviction, his unshakable belief that some things were worth dying for. It gave her strength to continue. The turning point came 6 weeks into the resistance campaign. The Draknor launched a major offensive against the capital. Thousands of warriors, supported by war beasts and air support, pushed toward the city walls. Queen Azara sent a desperate message. They could not hold. The city would fall within days. Theros wanted to launch a relief attack, but Jake had a different idea. The offensive had pulled most Draknor forces away from their main base. If the resistance struck there, they could destroy enemy command and control. Without leadership, the attacking forces would be confused, disorganized. It was risky. The main base was heavily defended. But Jake saw the opportunity. This was their chance to turn the tide completely. Liara supported the plan. Theros trusted her judgment. Within hours, the entire resistance mobilized. Every fighter, every weapon, everything they had went into this one desperate gamble. The attack began at dawn. Jake coordinated the assault through Liara, directing units with precision. The resistance fighters moved like water, flowing around strong points and striking at weak ones. They used every tactic Jake had taught them, every lesson learned in weeks of guerrilla warfare. The Draknor command center was buried deep in a converted factory. Getting there meant fighting through defensive perimeters and guard posts. The resistance took heavy losses, but they pressed forward. They had to. Everything depended on this. Liara fought alongside Theros in the vanguard. She used her psionic powers to deflect enemy fire, to shield wounded fighters, to tear through obstacles. Jake guided her movements, warning her of danger she could not see, suggesting tactical adjustments. Together, they were formidable. They breached the command center just after noon. Inside, Draknor officers scrambled to organize a defense. They had not expected such a bold attack. The resistance showed no mercy. They had learned from Jake that in war, hesitation kills. They struck hard and fast, overwhelming the defenders. Kren led a demolition team into the communication hub. Explosives were set with precision. When they detonated, the entire facility collapsed inward. Flames and smoke billowed into the sky. The Draknor command network went silent. At the capital, the attacking Draknor forces suddenly faltered. Without orders, without coordination, they became confused. Queen Azara's defenders seized the moment and counterattacked. The enemy broke and ran. For the first time since the invasion began, the Korvati won a major victory. The celebration in the resistance camp was brief. They had won, but at terrible cost. Nearly a third of their fighters were dead or wounded. Theros himself had taken a blade wound that would scar. But they had achieved the impossible. They had hurt the Draknor badly. That night, Liara stood on a hilltop overlooking the burning enemy base. Through their bond, Jake felt her complex emotions. Pride in what they accomplished. Grief for those lost. And something else. A growing awareness that this bond between them was becoming more than just tactical necessity. Jake. She spoke aloud, though she did not need to. What happens when this war ends? What happens to us? Jake had been wondering the same thing. The bond was permanent unless deliberately broken. When peace came, would Liara release him? Should she? Could they continue like this, two souls sharing one existence? I do not know. His honesty was absolute. The bond made lying impossible. I know what should happen. You should release me. Let me find peace. But I do not want that. I want to stay with you. Liara closed her eyes. I do not want to release you either. That makes me selfish, does it not? Maybe, or maybe it just makes you human. Jake's mental laugh was sad. Well, as human as an alien princess can be. They stood together in silence, watching fires burn in the distance. Two beings who should never have met, bound by magic and necessity and something deeper. The war was far from over, but in that moment they both understood that whatever came next, they would face it together. In the capital, Queen Azara received reports of the victory. She also received reports about her daughter. The soul bond, the human consciousness that guided their tactics. The growing controversy among the royal court and religious leaders. High Priest Sarath demanded an audience. He insisted that Liara be ordered to release Morrison's soul immediately. The bond was unnatural, dangerous, corrupting. Other council members agreed. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Queen Azara silenced them all. My daughter and the human have saved this city. They may yet save our entire civilization. I will not order the bond broken while we still face extinction. When the war ends, then we will address this matter. Until then, they have my full support. Sarath was not satisfied, but he bowed to the Queen's authority. For now. But he and others like him watched and waited. They believed the soul bond was wrong, that it would lead to disaster. They would be proven right, though not in the way they expected, because deep in Draknor territory something stirred. The Queen of the Hive, ancient and powerful beyond measure, had felt the destruction of her command center. She had tasted the Resistance's tactics through the minds of dying warriors, and she had sensed something impossible, a human consciousness merged with Korvathi psionic power. The Draknor Queen was intrigued. This soul bond represented something new, something she could use. If she could capture this human Korvathi hybrid, study it, perhaps replicate it, she could create an army unlike any before. Warriors with human tactical thinking and Korvathi psionic abilities all under her control. Orders went out across the Draknor hive mind. Find the princess, capture her alive, bring her to the Queen. The war was about to enter a new and terrible phase. Jake felt it first. A presence in the darkness, vast and cold. It touched the edges of his awareness like fingers testing a locked door. He was meditating with Liara, their shared consciousness exploring the strange space where their minds merged. The intrusion shattered their peace. Liara. Something is watching us. She felt it too now. A massive intelligence, ancient and utterly alien. It withdrew as soon as it realized they had noticed, but the damage was done. They both knew what it was. The Draknor Queen, the hive mind that controlled millions of warriors across a dozen worlds. Why would she risk revealing herself? Liara asked. Because she wants something. Jake's military instincts screamed warnings. She was studying us, learning about the bond. They brought this information to General Theros immediately. The old warrior listened grimly. If the Draknor Queen knows about the soul bond, she will want to capture you both, to study it, perhaps replicate it. Then we need to strike first. Jake spoke through Liara. Find the Queen and kill her. Without her, the hive mind collapses. Theros shook his head. We do not even know where she is. The Draknor guard that secret carefully. Then we make them tell us. Jake's plan was simple and brutal. Capture high-ranking Draknor commanders. Interrogate them. Follow the trail back to the Queen. Over the next 2 weeks, the Resistance conducted targeted raids. They captured 3 Draknor officers. Liara used her psionic abilities to probe their minds. What she found horrified her. The Draknor were slaves, every one of them. The Queen controlled them absolutely through psionic bonds similar to what she shared with Jake, but twisted and cruel. These warriors had no free will. They existed only to serve, to fight, to die at the Queen's command. Some had been enslaved for decades, others for centuries. The Queen was immortal and her control was absolute. From the captured officers' memories, they learned the Queen's location. She commanded her forces from a massive bioship hidden in the debris field of a shattered planet. Getting there would require passing through heavy enemy patrols and defensive installations. It would be a suicide mission. I will go. Liara's voice was steady when she announced her decision to the Resistance Council. This is my responsibility. Absolutely not. Queen Azara had traveled to the Resistance base to argue against the plan. You are my daughter and heir. I cannot risk losing you on such a desperate venture. Mother, I am the only one who can do this. Jake's tactical knowledge is essential. My psionic abilities are needed to combat the Queen. And if we do not act, the Queen will eventually find a way to capture me anyway. Better to attack than wait for her to come for me. The Queen looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she turned to Theros. General, your honest assessment. Can this mission succeed? Theros hesitated. Then he nodded. It is dangerous. Many will die. But yes, it can succeed. Morrison's tactics have worked before. They may work again. Queen Azara closed her eyes. Very well, but I have conditions. You will take our best fighters. You will have an escape plan. And if the situation becomes hopeless, you will retreat. Promise me, Liara. I promise. Liara embraced her mother, and through their touch, Queen Azara felt something of Jake's presence, the human consciousness that had saved her daughter's life and now guided their resistance. It was strange and unsettling, but also oddly reassuring. Take care of her, Morrison. The Queen spoke directly to Jake. Bring my daughter home. I will do everything in my power, Your Majesty. But if it comes down to saving her or completing the mission, I will save her. Every time. Good. That is the right answer. The strike team assembled over the following days. Tharos insisted on leading it personally. Kren volunteered, along with 30 of the Resistance's best fighters. And there was one more addition. Kate Sullivan, the other human survivor on Valoria Prime, appeared at the base unexpectedly. She was a demolitions expert, tough and capable. When she learned about Jake's death and the soul bond, her reaction was complicated. Anger at what had been done to her friend, understanding of why it was necessary, determination to see his final mission through. Jake. Kate spoke while sitting across from Liara during mission planning. Can you hear me? I can hear you, Kate. Good to know you made it. Kate smiled sadly. You always were a stubborn fool. Could not even stay dead properly. Sorry about that. Jake's humor was still dry even in death. But I am glad you are here. We will need your expertise. The mission launched 3 days later. They used a captured Draknor ship, modified with stealth systems. The journey through enemy territory took 2 nerve-wracking days. Every sensor contact, every patrol ship they detected, could mean discovery and death. But Jake's planning held. They reached the debris field without being challenged. The Queen's bioship was enormous, a living fortress that pulsed with psionic energy. Jake could sense it even from a distance. The presence was overwhelming, like standing before a tidal wave about to break. They infiltrated through a waste disposal port. Kate's explosives opened their path deeper into the ship. Draknor warriors appeared, but the strike team cut them down quickly and quietly. Jake guided every step, warning of patrols, finding safe routes. But as they neared the Queen's chamber, something changed. The attacks became more coordinated. Ambushes appeared in places that should have been safe. The Queen knew they were coming. She had known all along. This was a trap. Fall back. Jake's order was immediate. This is a setup. Too late. Blast doors sealed shut behind them. Ahead, more doors closed. They were trapped in a corridor with enemies on both sides. Tharos rallied the fighters into a defensive formation. They would sell their lives dearly. Then the Queen's voice filled their minds, all of them human and Korvathi alike. It was not speech but pure thought, vast and terrible. Welcome, little princess, and welcome to you as well, dead human. I have been waiting for you. The walls ahead opened. Beyond lay a massive chamber. At its center sat the Queen. She was immense, her body merged with the bioship itself. Thousands of psionic tendrils extended from her, each one connecting to a different part of her empire. She was the heart of the hive, and the hive was her body. You interest me, little souls. The Queen's thoughts pressed down on them like physical weight. A bond between dead and living. Human brutality merged with Korvathi grace. I could use such a thing. Join me voluntarily, and I will spare your people. Refuse, and I will take you by force. Liara felt the Queen's power reaching for her, attempting to seize control of her mind. It was like being caught in a hurricane. She threw up mental shields, but they were inadequate. The Queen was too strong, too experienced. Liara began to falter, then Jake stepped forward. Not physically, because he had no body. but within the shared space of the soul bond, he placed himself between Liara and the Queen's assault. The attack hit him like a hammer. Pain exploded through his consciousness. But Jake had spent his entire life learning to endure pain. He had been shot, stabbed, burned, and beaten. He had survived horrors that would break most people. This was just one more fight. He pushed back against the Queen's power with every ounce of will he possessed. The Queen was surprised. A dead human resisting her. Impossible. She increased the pressure, attempting to simply crush Jake's consciousness out of existence. In that moment, Jake understood something profound. The soul bond was not just a connection between him and Liara. It was a doorway to something much larger. Through Liara's royal bloodline, he could feel the presence of every Korvathi who had ever been bound through the ancient ritual. Hundreds of souls, stretching back 1,000 years. And he could use that power. All of it. But doing so would destroy him completely. His consciousness would be scattered beyond any hope of recovery. He would cease to exist in any meaningful way. Liara felt his realization through their bond. She understood what he was considering. No, Jake, please, there must be another way. There is not. You know that as well as I do. The Queen is too powerful. This is the only way to stop her. But I will lose you. Completely this time. Forever. Yes. Jake's acceptance was calm. I have been living on borrowed time since the temple. This is what I was meant to do. Why the ritual worked when it should not have. I was always meant to be the weapon that saves your people. Tears streamed down Liara's face. I love you. I never said it while you were alive, but I loved you even then, and now I love you more. Please do not leave me. Through the soul bond, Jake felt the depth of her feelings, and he shared his own. The love he had hidden, thinking it was wrong to feel such things for an alien princess. The desire to protect her that went beyond duty or honor. The knowledge that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, even in death. I love you too. And because I love you, I can do this. I can let go. Live, Liara. Rebuild your world. Remember me. But do not mourn forever. Promise me. Liara wanted to refuse, to hold on, to find any other solution. But she knew Jake was right. This was the only way. I promise. Goodbye, Jake Morrison. Goodbye, Princess. Then Jake reached deep into the soul bond. He grasped the ancient power of the royal bloodline, the accumulated psionic might of 1,000 years of Korvathi rulers. He pulled it all into himself, becoming a conduit for forces that should have destroyed him instantly. But Jake did not try to contain that power. Instead, he shaped it. Using a human's understanding of violence, he forged that vast energy into a weapon. Not a blunt instrument like the Queen used, but a precise blade designed for one purpose, to cut. The Draknor Queen realized too late what was happening. She tried to withdraw to protect herself, but Jake was faster. He struck at the heart of her consciousness, severing the psionic bonds that connected her to billions of enslaved warriors. The Queen screamed. The sound echoed across star systems, felt by every Draknor warrior simultaneously. The hive mind shattered like glass. 1 billion voices cried out in sudden, terrifying freedom, and Jake Morrison, soldier and guardian, felt himself begin to fade. His consciousness fragmented, pieces of his awareness scattering like smoke and wind. He had one last moment of clarity. He felt Liara's presence, warm and bright, surrounding him with love. Then even that faded. He was gone. The silence was absolute. Where once the Queen's consciousness had dominated everything, now there was only emptiness. Liara stood frozen in the chamber, feeling the absence where Jake had been. The soul bond was severed. For the first time in months, she was truly alone in her own mind. Around her, chaos erupted. The Draknor warriors, suddenly freed from the Queen's control, collapsed or fled in confusion. Some attacked each other. Others simply stood motionless, unable to comprehend their sudden autonomy. The bioship itself began to die, its organic systems failing without the Queen's will to sustain them. General Tharos grabbed Liara's arm. "Princess, we must leave. Now, Liara did not respond. She was searching desperately for any trace of Jake, any fragment of his consciousness that might remain. But there was nothing. He had burned himself out completely, sacrificing everything to destroy the Queen. Kate pulled Liara toward the exit. Come on. Jake died to give us this chance. Do not waste it. That broke through Liara's shock. Jake had given everything so they could escape. She would not dishonor his sacrifice by surrendering to grief. Not yet. She ran with the others, fleeing the dying bioship. They made it back to their ship with minutes to spare. Behind them, the Queen's bioship tore itself apart in massive explosions. The strike team escaped into the debris field and then to open space. They had won. But the victory tasted like ashes. News of the Queen's death spread rapidly. Across Draknor-occupied space, the hive mind's collapse caused instant chaos. Warriors who had known only obedience suddenly faced terrible freedom. Some went mad. Others fled. A few, the oldest and strongest-willed, began to remember who they had been before enslavement. The Korvathi military, trained in Jake's tactics, exploited the confusion ruthlessly. They launched coordinated strikes, reclaiming world after world. The Draknor, without central command, could not mount an organized defense. Within weeks, the invasion was broken. Within months, every Draknor warrior had either fled or been captured. The war was over. The Korvathi had survived. But for Liara, victory brought no joy. She walked through the celebrations in the capital like a ghost. People cheered her as a hero. They called her the warrior princess who saved their civilization. She felt none of it. The empty space where Jake had been was a wound that would not heal. Queen Azara found her daughter standing alone in the palace gardens one night. Liara was staring at the stars, her face expressionless. The Queen sat beside her without speaking for a long time. Finally, Liara broke the silence. I killed him, Mother. I bound his soul and then used him until there was nothing left. How am I any different from the Draknor Queen? You gave him a choice. The Queen's voice was gentle. The Draknor enslaved billions against their will. You and Morrison chose to be bound together. That makes all the difference, but he still died. Because of me, he died doing what he chose to do, protecting those who could not protect themselves. Would you take that choice from him? Would you diminish his sacrifice by claiming he had no agency? Liara had no answer to that. They sat in silence under the stars while the celebrations continued in the city below. Days passed. The Korvathi began rebuilding. Kate Sullivan stayed to help coordinate with Earth, arranging for military advisors and supplies. She spent time with Liara, sharing stories about Jake, the real man behind the warrior with all his flaws and virtues. He was not perfect, Kate said during one conversation. He had a temper. He carried guilt over people he could not save. He pushed himself too hard and never knew when to rest. But he was loyal. Once he decided to protect someone, he never gave up. Not ever. That sounds like him. Liara managed a sad smile. Thank you for telling me these things. It helps to know him more completely. He cared about you, you know. Kate's voice was soft. Before the invasion, he used to talk about you sometimes. How smart you were. How you actually listened to his lectures when everyone else dismissed them. He respected you before the bond. I think he might have loved you even then. Tears fell from Liara's eyes. She did not try to stop them. 3 months after the war ended, Liara commissioned a monument. It stood in the center of the capital, a statue of Jake Morrison as she remembered him. Strong and determined, rifle in hand, standing ready to face any threat. The inscription read simply, "He came from a distant world but died as one of ours." The monument became a pilgrimage site. Korvathi who fought in the war came to pay respects. Freed Draknor warriors visited too, grateful to the human who released them from slavery. Jake became a symbol of something larger than himself, proof that sacrifice and courage transcended species. Earth sent representatives to the dedication ceremony. They brought Jake's personal effects and messages from his family. His younger sister, now a doctor as he had wanted, spoke at the monument. She told everyone that her brother had always wanted to make a difference. He found exactly what he was looking for, even if it cost him everything. 5 years passed. Queen Azara abdicated, feeling her age and the weight of ruling through such terrible times. Liara ascended to the throne as Queen Liara Velkorthan. She ruled differently than her predecessors. She maintained the Korvathi values of wisdom and peace. But she never forgot Jake's lessons about the necessity of strength. Under her leadership, the Korvathi established the Guardian Corps, an elite military force trained in both traditional psionic arts and human tactical doctrine. They would ensure that no future invasion caught the Korvathi unprepared. The Corps motto suggested by Kate Sullivan was simple: never again. Earth and the Korvathi Empire signed a formal alliance. Human military advisors were stationed on every major Korvathi world. In exchange, the Korvathi shared their advanced technology and psionic knowledge. The partnership was named the Morrison Accord, honoring the soldier who made it possible. Liara never married. When questioned about heirs, she pointed to her younger sister's children. The royal line would continue through them. She had a different purpose now: building a lasting peace that would honor Jake's sacrifice. She established the Morrison Institute, a center for interspecies cooperation and military exchange. Human and Korvathi officers trained together, learning from each other's strengths. The institute became famous across known space as a model for how different civilizations could work together. But despite all her achievements, Liara carried a private grief. The empty space where Jake had been never truly healed. She learned to live with it, but some nights she still reached out with her psionic senses, hoping against hope to feel some trace of him. Then, on the 5th anniversary of Jake's final sacrifice, something impossible happened. Liara was meditating at Jake's monument as she did every year on this day. The plaza was empty in the early morning light. She closed her eyes and let her awareness expand, touching the psionic field that surrounded all living things. And there, faint but unmistakable, she felt him. Not the soul bond, as it had been, not a full consciousness, but an echo, a fragment of Jake's awareness that had somehow survived his destruction, preserved in the collective psionic field of the royal bloodline. Jake. Her mental voice was tentative, afraid to hope. The response was weak, barely there, but it was his voice. "Hey, princess, miss me?" Liara's eyes flew open. Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time in 5 years they were tears of joy. "Every day. I missed you every single day, sorry about that." Jake's mental laugh was familiar and wonderful. Did not mean to be gone so long, kind of lost track of time. Royal scholars were summoned. They studied this phenomenon and concluded that Jake's sacrifice had left an imprint in the psionic field. It was not truly him, they said. Just a resonance. An echo without true consciousness. But Liara knew better. When she reached out to this presence, it responded with Jake's humor, his concern, his love. It could not offer tactical advice or see through her eyes. It was a shadow of what he had been. But it was enough. They could not share a bond as before. But on quiet evenings, when Liara sat in her garden and reached out with her mind, Jake was there. They talked about small things. The progress of rebuilding. Funny moments from the day. The weight of ruling an empire. "You are doing good work," Jake told her one night. "The peace you are building, the alliances, the Guardian Corps, all of it. I am proud of you. I learned from the best. Nah, you are always going to be great. I just helped you survive long enough to figure that out." Years passed. Liara ruled wisely and well. The Korvathi prospered. The Morrison Accord brought humanity and the Korvathi closer together. Other species joined the alliance, creating a network of mutual defense and cooperation. When Liara was old, her crystalline skin marked with the passage of time, she sat in her garden one final time. She had ruled for 40 years. She had built the peace Jake died for. Now she was tired and ready to rest. Jake's presence was there as it always had been. "Ready to go?" he asked gently. "Yes, I think I am." "Will you be there?" "Wherever I go next, I will be there always. Some bonds cannot be broken. Not by death. Not by time. Not by anything." "Good. I would not want to face eternity without you." Liara closed her eyes and let herself drift away. Her last thought was of Jake, young and alive, smiling at her the way he had when they first met. And somewhere in the space between life and death, she felt his hand take hers. Together they moved toward whatever came next. In the capital, a young Korvathi child stood before Jake's monument. The child's parent explained who the human warrior was, how he came from far away, how he taught them to be strong when they needed strength, how he sacrificed everything to save people who were not even his own species. "Are all humans like that?" the child asked. "No." The parent smiled. Humans are like anyone else. Some good, some bad. But when they choose to stand for something, when they decide to protect someone, they do so with a determination that can move worlds. The child thought about this. Will we always be friends with humans? Always. Because a human named Jake Morrison showed us that true strength comes not from violence, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for those who cannot protect themselves. That is a lesson we will never forget. The parent and child placed flowers at the monument's base, joining hundreds of others. The statue stood guard over the city, a permanent reminder of the soldier who fell defending an alien princess, and whose soul the queen claimed not from selfishness but from desperate love. Some bonds, the inscription read on a new plaque added years later, are stronger than death itself. This is the story of one such bond. May it inspire courage in all who hear it, and in the centuries that followed it did. The story of Jake Morrison and Princess Liara became legend. It was told to children across a dozen worlds. It inspired countless acts of courage and sacrifice. It reminded people that love and duty could transcend any barrier, even the barrier between life and death. Because some stories are more than just stories. They are truths that echo through time, and this truth was simple. When faced with impossible choices, some souls will always choose to stand and fight. Not for glory, not for reward, but because someone needs protecting, and that is reason enough. That was Jake Morrison's legacy, and it would endure as long as anyone remembered that even in death, the bonds forged in sacrifice can never truly be broken.